Chapter 43. So, you're saying that a first-year student played with our Nomu. Not only that, but he managed to physically overpower him, cut 2 of his limbs, and used lightning and fire. He even gave him brain damage, causing the Nomu to stop functioning, said the man in a tuxedo, his face a flat surface of burned skin with no nose or eyes, just a mouth, linked to an oxygen mask. Facing him was a middle-height man covered in black purplish fog. Yes, master. I've confirmed his abilities, and I had to get out as quickly as possible, said the fog man, Kurojiri, currently talking to his master, all for one, the founder of what was previously known as the Villain League. Subarashi, said the master. And he's just in his first year, and his quirk has awakened. Despite his condition, the master was someone who kept a close ear on quirks, hoping that one of them could rewind him to his previous state after his fight with All Might. That, and a quirk that would allow him to sense his surroundings without needing his eyes. He has improved so much, commented Kurojiri. Has he used the ray you talked about? Asked the master. Yes, in addition to his lightning and fire. His quirk, aura, is a type of energy that allows him to do many things. You know, when I first heard about it, I thought he had a quirk similar to mine. Apparently, it's just one, All for One said. I wonder now, does it enhance his abilities? Yes. He overpowered the Noma when he activated his aura, said Kurojiri. Interesting. Once our spy gets to UA, get rid of All Might. And once we get Ragdoll, we'll get him, said the master. It was a simple plan. The spy would enroll in UA this summer. After that, breaking through the school would be a piece of cake. They didn't want to alert UA or All Might by revealing their interest in that student. All they had done was test him. And it seemed that Kurojiri's master was pleased with the results. XXX. I had just finished drawing a circle of Japanese characters around the Nomu, my head throbbing with a headache. Absorbing knowledge through Brian Spong was not painful, but my brain demanded a long night of sleep to form neurons for the new information. I grabbed my notebook, the one I use for writing notes. After performing a series of hand signs, I smashed the last page. The characters came to life, surrounding the Nomu. With a puff of smoke, the Noma vanished, leaving behind a kanji of seal in the notebook. I then put the notebook back in my backpack, wore my shirt and coat again, and walked back home while reflecting on what had happened. The League of Villains were obviously interested in my quirk. The fight with the low-level Noma seemed to be a test, according to the latter's memories. Entering my room, I dispelled the couple of shadow clones I had summoned, regaining my energy and training for half an hour. Afterward, I lay on the bed and created a shadow clone to watch over me for the night. The last thing I wanted was a second attack. XXX. Mineta. He was a man who had experienced both heaven and hell. He had stumbled upon a big deal, where he earned a huge sum of money from his older brother, all for some 100 balls. His life had turned to the positive side. He had gotten the best clothes, and girls started paying him more attention. Even the 2 prettiest girls accepted going on dates with him. He had been the happiest man until his brother had said that there were no more deals. Mineta's money had been depleted, and the girls who had claimed to love him left. Mineta had entered a cycle of depression, and no money was coming in. He had even considered harming himself. Then, one day, Kenshiro had come with a cheap deal where he would have to give him balls for $10 worth of yen. Although it was cheap, it was better than nothing. Besides, he had gotten stronger, and he could make way more. Mineta had been sustaining 100 balls a day and more, earning himself 8K in the first week. At this rate, he could make a huge salary by the end of the month. Mineta had learned his lesson. He would work harder before the deal was off and live on the money he had made for a year. Today, he was walking at the school while wearing the latest brands. He smiled when he noticed the attention from others again, but he ignored them as he made his way to class. He stopped when he heard his phone vibrate. He picked it up and found a letter from his ex. After he had begged her to come back, she had ignored him, resulting in him writing a long list without a reply from her side. Today, there was a reply. Mineta, could we get back together? He raised his eyebrow. I have thought a lot, and I couldn't live without you. You are the man who was meant for me. Kenshiro's words rang in his ear. The only thing average and ugly guys like us have against the handsome people is money. Money is equivalent to resources, and it attracts the primate part. With it, you can have what you want. I love you, she typed again. Mineta typed back. Thanks. I love myself too. He then blocked her. He was in a post-nut clarity mode. Since he changed his old clothes, he could change his chick now. XXX. Nijire Hado was lying on her bed, looking at her phone. Kenshiro was offline, and he didn't reply to her messages. One might think that he was ignoring her on purpose, but ever since she had learned that he gets stronger by meditating, she accepted that he was busy. But something bothered her. Kenshiro was a vigorous guy, and he had shown interest in her on the first day. He was quite provocative, which she liked about him. However, it had been a couple of months since they started dating, and he hadn't made a move on her. That made her a bit insecure. Was there something wrong with her, or was he just too busy? She couldn't figure him out. I wonder, is there a pimple on my head? She thought as she activated the front camera, seeing her face. Also, I'm certain that my breath smells good. She thought as she put her palm next to her mouth and exhaled. Yep, it smells like cherry. Then what's wrong? Were we in bad locations? She reached for her phone, typing, "Want to skip school tomorrow?" "Sure." Call the time and the date. Came an immediate reply. He wasn't asleep, it seemed. "I don't know. I feel like singing karaoke." "In the morning?" As he asked that, she raised her eyebrow. Was he really not getting the hint? "Yes," she typed back. XXX. As soon as I woke up, a rush of memories flooded my head, coming from my shadow clone. I sat up. I have a date. If I could scold the shadow clone, I would. But he was a part of me. And besides, karaoke with Nijire. It meant that I'd be alone with her. The muscles on my face started twitching. My morning would seem to apply pressure. As a man of his word, I couldn't possibly go back on my word. I sent a letter to UA, calling in sick. Chapter 44, R18. I didn't know how to feel as I stood facing a karaoke room at this time of the day. Was I confused as to why was it open at this time of the day? Or was my heart beating because of the mix of nervousness and excitement that I was going to be alone with Nijire in one room? I had a huge libido, but because I had been busy grinding, making money, and preparing for the lawless era, I was more of too busy to even bring the idea. I hope she doesn't think I'm a b-boy for not initiating that yet. No, I must initiate it. I thought as I looked at the sky. A hand tapped my shoulder. I turned and looked down, seeing Nijire's cute face and blue eyes staring at mine. "What are you thinking of?" she asked. "You," I replied. "Really? Weren't you just looking at the sky?" she asked. "It has the same color as your eyes," I spoke. I didn't know how I came up with that. Giggling, she held my hand and said, "Let's go then." I nodded. Okay. I was wondering what Midnight would think when two students of hers skipped the class on the same day. Feeling sensational from holding hands with Nijire, I thought it wasn't important. I looked at her. She was wearing a sundress that showed her smooth legs. Her chest jiggled with each step, and I was already imagining myself doing what any straight man would do. Soon, we arrived at a karaoke box called Youth Love. It's a bit expensive, but it's a nice place, and it has nice reviews, Nijire said. I grabbed my phone and quickly researched for it. I went to 3-star reviews. They were the most honest. Expensive compared to price, but clean and private. It's not for singing, though. Wink. Hee boy. I knew it, she knew it, yet no one said a word. I'm not that dense, and although she looked innocent, her mind wasn't. I love her. I put my phone back in my pocket, turned to her, and smiled widely. Don't worry. It's on me. Can a high schooler afford it? She asked, holding my arms and leaning on me, her melons pressing on my arm. A rush of heat got through my spine, getting me aroused. I love this feeling. You're talking as if you're not one yourself, I said, raising my eyebrow. We got inside, and we rented a room. I asked for a large one. When we got inside, I saw how it looked. It was white, with a big red couch in the middle and a large screen. What do you want to put? Nijire asked as she went to the TV, picking on a song. Barky C.I., I said. Barky C was like Cardi B from my previous life, but more like a Japanese version. Most of her songs were erotic, singing about sex and dirty things. Many regions banned her songs. But I was in a shady, naughty place, so it was on the list. Who is this one? Asked Nijire. Dunno. A friend of mine recommended it, I said. Nijire bent down to pick up the mic, exposing her large butt cheeks to me. I stared at them, savoring the details in my mind. The song started playing. Suck my lemon. Suck suck. She paused, seeming to progress the naughty meaning of the lyrics. To be honest, I liked that she was stunned. I could enjoy the view more. She turned her face to me, cheeks turning red a bit. She filled her cheeks with air, seeming to realize what I had just done to her. She changed it to more of romantic loud music, before coming and sitting next to me, throwing the mic to the side. I opened my arm, letting her lean on me. You just trolled me, she pouted. I placed my hand on her face, caressing her cheek. Because I wanted to see your cheeks like this, I said. If you wanted to, you could use other methods. She said, staring at my lips and then to my eyes. Was she hinting at me to do something? I didn't care anymore. We were here, alone, and we both were in the heat. I was losing control over my body. No, me and my body were working in harmony. I smashed my lips against her. She opened her port for me, our tongues dancing together. I sucked on her pink plump lips, placing my hand on the bottom of her waist and caressing it. Her flesh was so soft, so smooth that it felt so pleasing to play with. I could feel that I'd rather have my face than my hand there. In reply to my kiss, Nijire wrapped her arms around my neck. She jumped and sat on my crotch, kissing me with more passion. I had to admit, this girl seemed to have a huge libido as well. Even on our previous dates, she had pointed to my bulges more than once. She started moving her hips, grinding on my crotch, causing my hard-on to become painfully harder. We pulled out of the kiss. Before she could say anything, I followed her and kissed her on the neck with a pace mixed between slow and fast. Kinshiro. You're a bad boy, ah. She moaned softly, relaxing in my arms. A slight wetness dripped on my pants, and it didn't come from me. Let me make up for it, I said, pushing her on the couch on her back. What do you suggest? She asked. I looked at her expression. Her hourglass body, along with her red cheeks, increased my desire for her. I want to eat you, I spoke. She raised her legs and spread them, revealing white panties drenched in her liquid, spreading her aroma. If there is something I learned from my previous life, it would be that foreplay was more important than directly jumping to sex. I wasn't the type of dude who just put his penis in, release his load, and go. The last thing I wanted was to have cold sex. I wanted my partner to have pleasure as well as make love. Nijire bit on her bottom lip. I'll guide you. I placed my fingers on her panties, grabbing them down. What welcomed my sight was a pink plump lip with a small layer of recently shaved blue hair. She even shaved for me. I thought as I changed my stance, holding her legs and letting my head closer to her treasured hole. I could smell a nice smell. She even put perfume there. Seeing how she prepared herself for me, I couldn't laze around. And so, I started licking, following my previous life experience, finding the cherry, teasing it, playing with the hole, and then teasing the cherry again. From the way her vagina twitched and got wetter, I could tell that she was getting fun. I kept doing it for a few more minutes. Oh, my. Nijire exhaled a long moan. Don't stop. I'm coming, she said. With a twitch, her liquid gashed, and I managed to get my face out before the flood could get me. Still, I extended my tongue, quite curious about her taste. Her elbow on her head, she asked, How many times have you done this? Only you, I said. She closed her eyes, seeming to still be in the orgasm mood, ready for more. She opened her arm for me, saying, I want your dick star. I smiled, reaching my pocket and grabbing a condo star. Luckily for her, I anticipated this and bought one from the system. Giggling, she said, I'm on the pill though. I held my urge to laugh. We both have planned this day. Tell me, you still have your hymn? I asked. Lost it to toys, she replied. It was good. It meant that there would be no sailing in the Red Sea, and I wouldn't have to be afraid of not being too gentle. As a cultivator and a warrior, my physical capabilities were very high even compared to those who have physical enhancement quirk. I was a bit fearful for her well-being. But again, this MHA world. Nijire would have a city-level durability, but I'd be as gentle as possible. Throwing the condo asterisk away, I got my pants down. I was already hard. After all that play, getting all of that young energy, there was no way I'd not release today. I rubbed the head of the will of the D against her puss asterisk, grinding it up and down. Nijire bit her lip, saying, Put it in. As you wish, I replied. And so I put it, slowly thrusting. Because of her wet, it got in so smoothly. The feeling was sensational. She was so tight that I had a problem putting the remaining half of my organ. But it was enough for me to enjoy her tightness. Ah. Nijire moaned loudly, closing her eyes. Do you ask me if I regret skipping school? I'd not regret it even if I got kicked out. Her soft moans along my rhyme caused us to reach the climax at the same moment, exchanging our jizz. I love you, she said as soon as I pulled out. In reply to her, I lay next to her and hugged her. Love you too. Before putting my lips on her **** and kissing. The day was still long and we still had time. And I was no way near done. Chapter 45. Man, I couldn't believe that I forgot what it was like to feel human again. Having sex with MHA reminded me of that. The punishment I received for skipping a day of school was totally worth it. While we were sitting in history math, MHA stared at me, a small smile drawn on her face. I smiled back. She then turned and gazed at the board. Now that I had shadow clones to do the training for me, I could enjoy life a little more. Since that day at the karaoke room, our relationship had grown stronger. We were intimate whenever we had the chance, in the park, in the bathroom, in the forest. In my whole current life, I had never felt happier. And so, 3 weeks had passed. Today was the day I'd check on my Night Eye female clone. I thought of that as I stopped cultivating. Both my mana and chi grew bigger once I was done reprocessing the energy from the shadow clones. Today, I reached the 6th level of the Earth Realm, and I progressed further to the heroic rank as a warrior. If I fought the Nomu, who was sealed in my notebook, again, I'd throw him around like a ragdoll. It's not like I hadn't done so before, but now, I'm capable of doing it with more ease. Since there is a possibility of all-for-one monitoring me, I shouldn't show any improvement and keep my power level around that. After I replenished myself, I created a shadow clone and made it walk out of the door of my house, going for a jog. Since there were possible spies lurking around my house, I preferred not to transform in front of them. I then used transformation jutsu, turning into Dom, who used body flicker jutsu to appear on the road next to my house. I then ordered a taxi, heading to my warehouse. This thing had cost me a fortune. It better work. While I was walking inside, I thought about how I should meet the new human. If the cloning machine is the womb, and as the guy who put the DNA in it, wouldn't that make me the father? I stopped for a second, now realizing that cloning was wrong on so many levels. What if she had feelings? Definitely she would. What if she felt like a mistreated orphan and decided to start her villain arc and end the world? These were possibilities I hadn't thought of. Feelings meant people could get hurt, whether they were created in a womb or a machine. It's okay, I'll treat her like my daughter, I thought, feeling nervous, like a father waiting next to the labor for his newborn. I entered my warehouse and stood in front of the cloning machine. Inside was a green-haired woman with a few golden strands, naked and hugging her long legs. Her skin was so smooth that I couldn't help but think of her as Night Eye's sister. On the tablet on the tube, a text told me that the cloning process was completed, and I could bring her out now. According to Orochimaru, the clones would turn loyal to the first person they see. A special bond would be formed between you and them. They'd see you as a parent figure. I knew this trope. It was used with small dragons and magical beasts. But with a human, I didn't know how that could work. Anyway, during the time of her creation, I put a radio next to her. It said that it would help her pick up the language immediately. I took a deep breath, pressing on the extraction button. The liquid poured onto the ground, and the tub opened in half. The naked woman fell to her knees, breathing heavily. Like her biological brother, she was tall. Luckily, I got a few XL clothes. I thought as I opened my storage, picking up a female dress. Hey, I spoke. She looked at me with her golden eyes. Dad? She looked around with a daze on her face. This reminded me of my childhood, when I had suddenly gained self-awareness, with no memory before, and was questioning everything. Who is my brother? Why am I calling him so? Who is everyone? I had no memory prior to that, but I knew somehow. Wear this, I said, handing her the clothes. She stood up, nearly as tall as Night Eye, standing at 190 centimeters. I was glad that I managed to pick up the right size clothes. Thank you, Father, she said as she took them. They grow up so fast, I thought, wiping a fake tear from my eye. Anyway, I want to ask you, do you have any idea why you are here? I asked. She pondered for a moment before she said, Isn't it because my father brought me into the world? She then looked at the machine behind me, and this is Mom? So, I should help my father with whatever he wants. It's quite weird to call me father since you are physically older than me, I sighed. Call me just kin. I then extended my hand to her and added, You can see the future. Touch me and make eye contact with me. But don't see too far into the future. Okay, she said with a wondering tone. She touched me, and at that moment, she opened her eyes widely. You'll get home, and you'll meet Grandma and Grandpa. Also, you'll teach me things. I have an idea about this world. Quirks. So that's what I have. A quirk that allows me to see the future. Yes, I nodded. She was very smart for someone who was just brought into this world. And you are going to buy me an identity in the future. I said, not so far, I scolded, not wanting spoilers. But deep down, I was happy to know that I found a way to buy an identity. She lowered her head and pouted, Tears ACC mulating. Don't take my scolding to heart, I said. For now, we should give you a name. She nodded. Is there a name you like? As I asked, her smile became brighter. I want to be called Rin. Better name than Sakura, I thought and nodded. Okay, Rin, I said. That's a good name. Upon hearing my praise, she smiled. I could tell why Orochimaru was against using magic artifacts to clone people. You have to raise them as if they were your child, and they will sooner or later develop their own free will. In short, they were humans, and it's not better to provoke the rebellious nature of humanity. So I had to treat her like my kid, although I never had one. Okay, daughter, I'll teach you a bit about the world, the alphabet, how to read, and use the computer. With that being said, I activated my Sharingan and stared into her eyes. I activated a special genjutsu, where I took her into a world where I could manipulate things. I let her learn about the alphabet and the writing characters through songs. Then I showed her how to use the computer and so on. It took some time, but it was worth it. She had so many questions inside the genjutsu world, but all had been answered. After that, I opened my system. I got a few things out of the storage. A fridge full of fruits and meat. Gym equipment, a computer, plus a TV and a large bed, and a spare set of clothes. Use these for now. I'll visit you often. But can I come with you, Kenshiro-sama? Call me just Ken, I said. Okay. She nodded. By the way, I said as I opened the computer, before entering a trading market website that showed the graph of the crypto. Yes. Can you see the future and tell me where this would go? I pointed to the screen. With her finger, she pointed to the movement of the market. I clicked on the arrow tool, taking her remarks seriously. I then opened my phone. I already had an account with 10K. I made a margin call. If what she was saying was right, I'd double my money without losing it all within the next few hours. I patted her on the head, her cheeks turning a bit red. Once I'll get you an identity, I'll make you move with me, I said with a smile. A sense of excitement took over me. With this, I could become a billionaire by the next year if I played my cards right and made a few intentional losses. I'm excited for that, Ken, she replied as she hugged me. Surely, this girl liked validation from her daddy. Yes, I may not be her biological father, but I am her daddy. Chapter 46. It was nighttime, and I was having a nice family dinner. The only missing part was my daughter, goddaughter. I was playing with my spoon. Adopting someone could change a man's heart. So, this is the feeling of being responsible. But instead of providing for her, she's providing for me. Would it be considered child labor? I smiled. She's physically older, though. At any rate, I had thought about the issue of propriety, and I reached a solution that could make me a powerhouse in both markets, here and in the other world. With my parents' permission, I could start a biotech company. I could own properties under the company name rather than mine. Suddenly, I shivered, remembering that I'd have to deal with taxes. Taxes were the biggest scam in history. The poor approved them to take money from the rich, but the latter used it better and drained the poor. Don't hate the players, hate the game. What are you thinking of? Asked my mom. Starting a company, I replied. She lifted her eyebrows, saying, You don't joke often. Are you serious? I nodded. What about the capital? It would take a lot of work. I just want to try starting a business. Don't worry. I have connections in UA with some geniuses. We could start a biotech company. For what purpose? Mom, you talk like an investment shark. It's obviously having something to do with quirks. Are you going to sign the papers or not? I said, my tone full of seriousness that implied if she didn't approve, I'd leave the house by the time I turned 18. As a minor, I couldn't start my own business. But in a couple of years, I would. She sighed. Well, I can. But make sure you don't get into legal troubles. Thanks, I replied with a gentle tone, smiling. But just to tell you, you are going broke, she said. And I won't help you with any capital. I have nothing to lose anyway, I replied. I lifted my phone, entered the trading application, and found that the position I had made earlier had hit the target, doubling my money. If I doubled this 9 times, I could end up with 1,000 times my starting capital. With this, I wouldn't have to explain where I got a huge capital in the future. Rin, I love you so much. For a second, I kissed my phone. When I pocketed it back, I found my family staring at me. Mineta pointed at me. He's totally fallen for his girl. Mom laughed, and Dad did the same. I rubbed the back of my head and sighed. I excused myself and went to my room, popping the 2 shadow clones that had been waiting for me before taking another 30 minutes to cultivate and reprocess the energy. Then I lay down, picked up my phone, and went to my social media. You have a new friend request from Rin Daddy Girl. The profile picture was of a golden-eyed girl smiling and making a peace sign with her fingers. She just learned how to open a social media account just after being born. My eyes almost popped. I accepted the friend request. Shortly after, I got a video call from her. When I opened it, I found Rin looking at me from the warehouse. "You're not asleep?" I asked. "It's my first day in life. Why would I waste time by sleeping?" she asked back. I didn't expect her to learn how to open a social media account this quickly and even write to me. That level of intelligence even scared me. "Okay," I replied. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm asleep. Do you want company?" "Not for now. Not until I get you papers." "So, when are you going for a visit?" "Tomorrow." "Do I need to do something now?" she asked as she held a bowl of grapes, eating. "Be a good girl and watch TV. I'm pretty certain you'll learn a lot by watching drama." "Okay, Kin," she replied. "You're enjoying it?" "The grape is sweet, yet a bit sour. Pleases my taste. The bed is comfortable. But I find the people on the internet quite crazy. I wondered what kind of rotten brains that had no shame to say something like that. Don't tell me, please. Also, I'm getting plenty of invitations and DMs from guys. What's wrong with them? Change your profile picture and gender in the social media profile. They won't bother you anymore. And don't share your pictures or the warehouse. I see how this works. So, by being male, you don't get any attention." Closing my eyes and sighing, I said, in short, yes. I decided not to go on a rant and tell her how I don't need anyone. By the way, be careful. A year from now on, you'll be targeted by a group of guys led by a strong black beast. I had expected that would happen at some point. But at the next year, I'd get targeted by the villains. I admit, I had made some changes in the timeline. I expected many things to change, but to turn into a target instead of All Might. I sighed, not liking the spoilers. But at least, I had a date. "Thanks, Rin. Good night." With that, I concluded my call with her. "Okay," she replied, hanging up. I could understand why cloning was a hard process that Orochimaru had to work hard on. Teaching them language, making them obedient, and treating them like a tool was not an easy task. So, next year I'd be attacked. My little brother is going to pass the entrance exams this summer. I still have some time. I didn't want to know if I was going to win or not. If the future told me that I'd win, then I'd get lazy and get weaker at that time, changing the future to the worse. If otherwise, then I'd lose hope. With the fear of the unknown, my heart was beating uneasily. I may need to buy some power-boosting techniques that could increase my power in exchange for some of my lifespans. As a cultivator, recovering that won't be a trouble. For now, I needed to get stronger. Chapter 47. The intensity of my training had increased, and after a week of bad news, I managed to experience a couple of breakthroughs, reaching the 3rd circle mage rank. I had bought a few techniques from the system along with a few spells. I was looking out of the window, extending my hand outside, my mana creating a circle before turning into a powerful lightning bolt that hit a tree. It was so early in the morning, and I felt bad for the people who woke up to thunder instead of an alarm. I hoped that I hadn't given anyone a heart attack. Still, ninjutsu is more powerful at this current level than simple elemental spells. But there are some spells that are more powerful at 4th circle and beyond, such as Heavenly Thunder that summons lightning from the sky or Sunlight Spear. But at the 5th rank, Gravity Magic is what I'm looking for. Now that I think about it, in Naruto, everyone is a mage playing ninja except for Lee and Guy. I opened my eyes widely, seeming to realize another shocking fact about Naruto. And the professor, aka 3rd Hokage, is like Dumbledore. Orochimaru was like Voldemort. Shaking my head, I waited for the school bus before going to UA. We had a heroic morning class where we would be developing our ultimate move. I stood there in the middle, wearing my gym clothes, observing how everyone was trying hard. Tamaki was having a hard time doing so since he had a bad breakfast, which he needed to char to sterilize the animals he ate. No wonder the guy was frowning all the time. "Just for the record, try eating a little bit," I said to him as I patted him on the back, seeing that he had an octopus arm. If I digest the food too quickly, I would have to refill. Mix it with fats that are slow to digest. Never thought of that. A hand tapped my shoulder. I turned, looking at Midnight as she smiled widely while closing her eyes. That wasn't a happy smile, I knew. Era, are you here to take over my job?" she asked. I shook my head. "Good. Now, show me some ultimate move," she spoke. I didn't know what these ultimate moves were or what. It was something you shout their name before executing them. I turned towards a nearby wall on the ground. Okay, here it comes. Budo no emo no. Pomo Gatling gun. I then channeled my chi into my hands that turned into mini afterimages as I thrust in the air. Many giant palms came out of them. The wall was crushed by the first palm. As for the others, they just made their mark on the ground. What I shot was about 20 Buddha palms quickly. I could do the same with a sunlight beam, but that move takes a lot of energy at my current level. I turned to her. Is it not enough? She had her eyes wide open. After processing what happened, she said, No, it's not. Just change the name, she replied, raising her eyebrows. What have you been doing in your internship? Training, I guess, I replied. She didn't seem to be all right. Did I show so much power? I mean, it shouldn't be something big compared to the feats some students could achieve, like making a mountain of ice and creating a shockwave that should destroy it. Still, that's much. Don't use this move in public places, she advised, and she had a point. She then turned and walked to another student, monitoring them. Nijire approached me, and she said, What was that attack? Buta no emo something? Just a move I invented. Doesn't that consume stamina? It does. I feel my arms are about to fall, I said. But at my cultivation level, this move doesn't consume stamina at all. Though, it would be different if I used this with a sunlight beam. You don't look like it, she remarked. I mean, I could give it a couple of more tries, I said. What about you? What move do you have? Levels. Want to try them? She said, smiling widely. I waved my hands, not wanting to test a shockwave. Wait a second. Why was she offering me to take them? I raised my eyebrow and stared at her. Why am I supposed to try it? I asked. Because you have been a bad boy, she said. Could she be hinting for me to do something naughty later? Ha ha ha. I laughed and messed with her hair. Let's meet later then. Hands behind her back, her lips stretched to a smile and she nodded. XXX. Meanwhile, Midnight had made a quick tour of the office of the principal, Nizu. Nizu was a male from an unknown species. He could be a mutated human. He could be a mutated rat or a bear. You could never tell. But there is one thing certain. He was one of the people with the highest IQ in the world that he could defeat villains by using throwing a coin in some location, causing a ripple effect that could do severe damage. He could anticipate the results even before they could happen. She felt that she had to visit him after what she had seen Kenshiro had done. The movement he had developed of giant pressured palms was simply too much. One palm caused a thick mock wall to be shattered, yet he could release so many of them at the same moment. That wouldn't have been trouble. But he had just awakened his quirk less than half a year ago, and it would be trouble if she was his opponent in the final exams. Midnight stood in front of the door and knocked. The door was opened, revealing a short humanoid of an unknown species in a suit. Ms. Midnight, what brings you here? Asked Nizu with a smile. I've come to ask you about a student of mine, replied Midnight, releasing a sigh. What's the matter? His quirk is very strong, and his growth rate is incredible, she replied. Amused, Nizu raised his eyebrow. You're talking about Kenshiro, whose quirk is an energy type. Midnight nodded. She then proceeded to tell him what he had just done. I don't see that as trouble, Nizu simply smiled, sounding happy. Yet his eyes had a deep worry in them. She could sense that. I wouldn't either, but he had awakened his quirk less than a year ago. He's a late bloomer. He could be targeted by some bad villains, or worse, be seduced to turn into one, Midnight said. Would his body be able to handle his quirk if it continues growing? I'm a bit worried. But what she didn't know, and would know in the future, was that he was holding back. Why don't you come in and talk about it? Nizu invited her. Sorry, but I still have to get back to my class, Midnight said. Too bad. I was going to introduce you to hero number 1, said Nizu, before opening the door completely, revealing a 220 centimeters tall man, full of muscles, smiling. He was none other than All Might. Yash, said All Might as he raised his hand. Chapter 48. Hey, young Midnight, said All Might as he raised his hand, addressing the teacher who had reported her interesting student. All Might, what a pleasant surprise. What are you doing here? Midnight said with a shocked expression on her face. She had learned that All Might and Nizu were friends since the former was a student at UA, but it was still surprising to see him all of a sudden. Nizu answered the question. All Might will be joining UA as a teacher starting from the next trimester. You two are soon to be colleagues. I hope you get along. Midnight gave a polite bow. He was the most admirable hero in the world, after all. All Might stood in front of her, held her shoulder, lifting her. Let's work for the best of our students from now on. Yes, thank you, she replied. I'll go back to my class for now. I see. Let's talk about that interesting student of yours later, All Might said. Midnight didn't know how she would talk about that troublesome student of hers. He was just a cute little pie of muscles. Sometimes he carried out petty revenges. She then went away. Oh. All Might's bright smile vanished. His muscular body started shrinking, all of the muscles going flat. He now took on the appearance of a thin man. So, Misa-sensei, All Might said, you said that there is something interesting that could get me back to my peak? All Might replied. Ever since he had sustained that injury against All for One, he had been unable to sustain his form for long. Not only that, but he couldn't exert all of his power. He had been getting weaker by the day. Originally, he had come here to train his successor, to pass him the torch and guide him on the way, and to prepare him to fight All for one day. Yes, there is a little girl, rescued by your previous sidekick, Night-Eye, said Nizu. She's 4 years old, and she is currently in the process of being trained. 4 years old? What can she do? Asked All Might. Nizu smiled as if he was waiting for All Might to ask this question. Her power is Rewind, an energy type of Quirk. Upon birth, she'd rewind her parents to non-existence, said Nizu. With Eraserhead monitoring her, we could rewind you to your peak. Hold on. It's the first time I hear about this. A 4-year-old kid. Can she control her Quirk? Does her guardian allow her to do that? We are her guardians. She had been taken by Kai Chisaki, the young master of a Yakuza family, after her grandfather was put into a coma. She had been held in a lab where her blood had been taken for experiments repeatedly. She got fixed each time her blood was drained. In short, she has no one. And it's our luck that we managed to save her early. This, All Might clenched his fist, already feeling bad that he was injured and powerless. If he was in his prime, such a thing wouldn't have happened. Who was the hero who saved her? Someone from Kai's gang. He dropped her at Night-Eye's house. Apparently, he cut Kai's arms after he rescued the girl, said Nizu. That young man, what happened to him? He was arrested along with the gang. Although Eri had testified of him rescuing her, he kept denying. I think he was afraid of being seen as a traitor by the underground organizations and wanted to be taken to jail. He was put in a witness protection service. By the way, who dealt with the gang? Was it Night-Eye? Yes. With the help of Eraserhead and Kenshiro. Kenshiro? Asked All Might, raising his eyebrows. That's his hero's name. He's the student Midnight wanted to tell you about. His quirk is an energy type, allowing him to do feats. Physical enhancement, very high, fire, lightning, and superkinetic vision. He also can shoot beams that look like a sun ray. I remember that young man. He was the one who shot that yellow ray in the hostage situation that day with Night-Eye. All Might nodded. You may also remember him when he talked to the giant who went on a rampage and calmed him down, until MT Lady got in. I've seen that video. Her action was quite unnecessary as the situation was calm. But he could go on a rampage anyway, so she did what she had to do. By the way, what happened to the big guy? The court has verified his story. His manager delayed his payment and worked with his lawyer to scam him and put him in debts, which caused him to break down. He has left the mental health hospital and is now undergoing therapy. He will stay there for a couple of years. Glad to see justice served. All Might smiled. So, what do you say about my proposition? About rewinding me back, All Might said. What will you do if she loses control over her quirk? With Eraserhead, he can stop the rewinding process when it's necessary. I accept. But I'd like for that to happen after she trains more. Besides, I don't want to put pressure on a young child. What about your successor? Izuku is his name, I believe. He's the heart of a true hero. All Might gave Nizu a thumbs up when he mentioned young Izuku. Currently, the boy was working so hard to acquire one for all. After seeing that boy rushing to save a kid, despite the fear and the rules, he knew that he found the right one. Wouldn't you reconsider? Asked Nizu. All Might shook his head. I've already made my decision. Although, I'm a bit curious about the new student. You can participate in the final exams as a guest, said Nizu, and you could see him yourself. XXX. Eiko. I kept sneezing. Is my cultivation level low, or is someone talking about me? I wondered. It couldn't be the latter, could it? I had been hiding my progress ever since the Nomu attack, so Midnight couldn't talk about me as if I'm something big, right? After all, I wasn't giving it my all. Buta no Mo isn't a bad technique. It could be lethal if turned into a 100 palms. I was thinking. Also, a cowboy technique of finger beams sounds like a good idea as well. Techniques, there were plenty of them in the system, but I preferred to stick to a few since I didn't want to form quick reflexive habits. The last thing I wanted in a fight was to think of which technique I'm going to use. So, it was better to build them slowly. Eiko. I sneezed. Turning, I muttered, "They aren't done talking about me." "Don't flatter yourself," said Takami. Chapter 49. Days started passing by quickly after that peculiar day of sneezing. I was certain that someone had been talking about me. A lot. Anyway, the following months flew by, and I could barely feel them. Now, onto the important matters. Rin had developed enough social skills and social intelligence to interact with other people without them having doubts about her identity. Apart from that, I was visiting her every other day, teaching her about ninjutsu, and I even bought her a cultivation method. Since chakra was a mix of physical and spiritual energy, a cultivation method helped increase it. I also noticed that, despite being in the chi refinement stages, her quirk improved with her physique, allowing her to do new things, such as control her power. She could control how many hours she could see someone's future, even hers, and she didn't need to touch the person to see their future from a third-person perspective. It meant that quirks would be worth more money in the system now. Some may think I was wasting resources on a human that I made based on Night Eye's genes. 500,000 coins, which could amount to $150 million. But that was cheap compared to her golden eyes. On the other hand, I reached the 7th level of the Earth Realm, and I'm one step away from breaking into a heroic rank. It seemed that by the end of the final exams, I'd have power like none other. Of course, at school, I kept this hidden and continued to pretend that I was at my previous level, even though I had become 3 times as powerful. I typed this as I looked at my new laptop before closing it. My company request had been approved, and in a few days, I'd announce it to the public. My phone buzzed. I recognized the notification sound. I vanished and reappeared next to my phone. I read it. Your position has been closed. Plus $20 million each. Thanks to Rin, I managed to collect enough capital, nearly 50 million. The speed at which I was earning money was being manipulated by me. I had made a few losses on purpose. The last thing I wanted was to alert the people at the top. So, I had to make it seem natural. I also received an email. It listed the stocks that were going to soar this week, and it would be good to buy them. With $50 million as capital, I can start buying stocks and properties under the name of the company. I thought, I need to employ people, and the best person to be my CEO would be Rin. Speaking of Rin, she had learned that people in this world didn't know anything about cloning, and that she should keep that hidden. With the money I had now, I could buy her a legal identity by paying some tycoon who had influence on politicians. Since it was the weekend, I could conduct my business freely. I left my house, took a cab, and went to my warehouse nearby. I then entered stealthily. The warehouse was full of clothes and felt more like a feminine house. Rin was in the middle, lying on the bed, watching TV with her legs crossed. She was wearing shorts. She didn't seem to notice me coming in. That's bad. She could be assaulted by some stealth expert even after all the training I gave her. But I didn't think that most people could sneak like I could. Still, it was unacceptable. Rin, I called as I walked to her, making my steps as audible as possible. She sat up from the bed, looked at me, and smiled brightly. To her, I seemed to be the only family she had in this world. Although she was a clone, she was still a human. And our species had a biological longing for something called family. No man/woman was an island. Running to me, she jumped and hugged me strongly with a bear-like force. "Ken, I was waiting for you," said Rin. I looked behind her to see that she was watching a K-drama. A boy and a girl crying, rain dropping, and sad music being played while the camera moved in slow motion. "You're my everything. Rejoice." I wrapped my arm around her waist and lifted her high. "Is there some good news?" she said, opening her eyes widely while looking at the ground. "Today, we'll get you an identity," I spoke. "Oh, so you've contacted him," Rin said, her fear of being lifted replaced by both shock and happiness. I thought that she had anticipated this moment. Because of her ability, she had managed to gather information on potential identity brokers. After many months, she'll receive information that a certain tycoon was providing this service for a full $7 million. But thanks to the future vision, she could get that information now. What was unique about him was that the identity he could provide was totally legal. He also had enough influence on the Hero Public Safety Commission. Even the heroes couldn't arrest him or investigate his criminal activity. Because if they did, not only would he fall, but many members of the Hero Commission would also fall, and they couldn't even assassinate him. If there was someone I wanted to be like in the future, it would be him. I know, this world had some corruption. But so what? It was the lesser evil. Other than that, We had the choice of living in a wasteland. Most people think that the truth would save them. The truth was, there was no way to save yourself. Yes, I nodded as I put her down. So, I'll be moving in with you? She asked, cheeks turning red. Yes, once we buy a mansion. Now, will you become the CEO of my new company? Yes, she said, crying, acting like a girl being proposed to in some drama. That's my girl, I said, sighing heavily. I could now leave the investment to her, just after I teach her how to deal with big money in the market. After all, the bigger your money, the longer you have to wait for your trading request to be fulfilled. That's why most banks and institutes would break their positions into smaller parts. Still, I'd have a passive income now. XXX. The next day, I looked at a building on the edge of Mineta City, 10 stories high. I had bought the building, and it was the official office. It cost me around $30 million. A good investment. The name of the company was Snake Biotech, named after my business partner in another dimension. Rin was standing next to me, still looking at her ID card. It had her name as Rin, no family name. Her age was 20, which seemed to be accurate. It's not going to vanish, you know? I said. I know, she shook her head. Let's go inside. Once we got in, we arrived at the top floor. Rin got into her office. There was a PC with a large screen that displayed a large graph. On the screen, there was the company name with an account of 5 million. Can I trust you with this? I said, pointing to the money chiffer. Do you want me to tell you the future? Show me instead, I said, smiling with a calm face that concealed my blazing excitement underneath. Come back in a week, she said with a tone full of confidence. Chapter 50. One more week passed. I held my new phone, which happened to be one of the most expensive phones in the latest brand, very expensive. I couldn't believe how fast it was. It seemed to react to me even before I tapped on it. Anyway, I smiled when I looked at the notification. Plus $40 million. That was a small portion of the earnings Rin had made and transferred into my account. I could understand why society encouraged heroic life choices. If people used their quirks where it mattered, the banks wouldn't have money to make. Luckily, Night Eye's quirk is one of the rarest, I thought to myself. Everyone, come and watch. It's Kanashiro's company on the news, said Mineta. I could hear him thanks to my improved senses. My family gathered, but I didn't join them. I didn't want to appear happy or face the praise. Instead, I watched the news on my phone. Rin was wearing a white suit while looking at the camera. Today, she was going to hire some scientists for our company. I needed them so we wouldn't have to rely on Orochimaru every time. I'm the CEO of Biotech Company, and I'm happy to announce that we launched it. We're looking for employees now. Ms. Rin, is it true that you turned $5 million into $1 billion in a week? Are you a business genius? Or are you using some sort of quirk? The press asked. I can assure you that I've been diagnosed quirkless ever since I was a little girl, she replied. But there was one problem. She was never a little girl, not even for a second in her life. I felt proud seeing how she lied with a straight face. Also, her story was verifiable as her medical doc * mints had been counterfeited. No one could tell that she had a quirk. Do you have proof? Asked a journalist. It's the one who makes the claim who has to provide proof, Rin smiled. Do you have better questions? Who is the owner of the company? Are the rumors true that he's a minor? Godfather doesn't like to announce himself to the public. But he'll make an appearance today. Why did he start this? He wanted to research quirks, so that he can help people with problems and deal with extreme villains. It's a necessary leap in humanity's history that won't happen unless we take a step for it, she said. Well, part of that was true. If I managed to make a medicine that could damage quirks permanently, then I could make a huge international deal with the governments. It could be used to deal with captured villains. But the real purpose was to clone quirks and modify them. I could also make technology since I could always buy blueprints from other dimensions and talk with scientists over there. I turned off the phone, threw it away, and lay down. I put my hands behind my head and one leg above the other. Now, there is another problem. How would I transform a huge amount of money without alerting the authorities? Fake expenses? Works. But that doesn't make me immune. Maybe I need to sponsor some politicians, pick the loyal ones to me through Future's site, and even find a way to bribe the tax guys. When you get a huge amount of money, you suddenly feel that the world is your playground. Am I the first one to feel this way? I suddenly thought about a future female heroine, Momo. She had a quirk about creation. If she desired, she could create tons of gold. Some quirks were inheritable. Maybe her family got rich by that. Even this hero society, it's still run by capital. I shook my head. deciding to leave thinking about these things for the future. For now, I had two things to focus on, getting stronger and enjoying the time that I had. Suddenly, I got a phone call. I picked it up. It was Rin. "Have you seen my interview?" she asked. "Yes." "What do you think about it?" "Did I do good?" she asked. She was waiting for my approval. To this girl, my praise seemed to be the ultimate reward to her. I didn't blame her. Since I had been the first one her eyes fell on when she came to life, there had been a strong bond formed between us. I decided to give her what she wanted since she had done a very good job. "You made me proud, my little girl," I said. Sniff. I could hear a sob in the background. "But I'm taller than you, Daddy," she replied, not liking to be called little. "You're not happy?" I asked, not understanding why she was crying. "I don't know. This feeling is too good and warm," she replied. I could tell that there were tears getting in her way. "Anyway, I have another task for you," I said. Immediately, her sobbing was replaced by a firm attitude and a calm tone. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Since she had made her existence as a business genius lady, I believed that many would try to approach her or even attack her. Even though she had some level of strength thanks to cultivation and an ability to change her look, I couldn't rest at ease. "I want you to buy a villa for us and the family. We'll live together," I said. "Really? We're going to move in together," she screamed in joy. I closed my eyes and pushed my phone away from my ear a bit. Her pitch was quite high. "You think I'm lying?" "Sorry, I didn't mean it. I'll be going now. Good night." When I said that, I closed the call. A reflection of my face with a small smile appeared. I exhaled a sigh and walked out of my room. "Good evening, big brother," said the voice of Mineta, who was holding his hands together. He was giving me that sweet expression. For the first time in his life, he tried to act cute in front of me. "Drop the act or I'll beat you up," I spoke. I'd be more comfortable if he started a conversation with a curse. I had this self-rule. If your brother or male friends acted nice all of a sudden, and if no one cursed at you, be sure that they have a prank planned for you. I turned to my mom as I took a seat at the dinner table. "What's for dinner?" "Your favorite," she said. Mom was a nice person, but this time, she got nicer. "What's the occasion?" "Your company's success," she spoke. "I've always believed that you would be a big shot." I remembered when I had asked her for permission to start a company, and she had been so negative that she said I'm wasting time and money. "Is acting nice in this family something normal?" I asked. "Don't be surprised," said Dad. "When the monthly salary drops, your mom becomes nice to me like this. It's only a couple of days a month, but it's worth it." Haha. I laughed. "For God's sake," I sighed. "Anyway, guys, prepare to move with me." "What?" asked Dad. "I've asked my CEO to get us another place." "This place is a bit small," I spoke. "Can I get my girlfriends in?" asked Mineta. Mom shot him a glare that made Mineta put his hands on his mouth. He even dared to use the S next to girlfriend. "Who is that girl, by the way?" asked Mom. "My business partner," I replied. "When are you getting married?" she asked. I started coughing violently. "I'm Rin's family. Besides, marrying Night Eye's biological sister didn't sound right to me." "It's off the topic," I said, waving my hand. "She's like a blood sister that I've never had. So, don't bring that up." "I understand. So, how's your progress with Nijire?" Mom asked. "Nijire?" I asked. "I never told them about her." "You rode her in the sports festival, and she rode you." "It's easy to say that you're dating," Dad said. "No one said anything because you were busy with your study. Anyway, pack up your stuff. We'll be moving in a week." I stood up, losing my appetite. Everyone in this house got curious and talkative. "I've got school tomorrow. I'll sleep first. XXX. Your final exams are tomorrow. I hope you haven't forgotten," Midnight said. I looked at the people in my class. The girls nodded, seeming to have already prepared. The boys, however, opened their eyes widely. Tamaki's eyelids were shaking. "Since when did she say that?" "Since you were looking at her, but," I whispered to him. "Did she say that while writing something on the board?" "Yes." I nodded. My tone was calm, but truth be told, I didn't even prepare for it. Midnight seemed to know this already. Well, it wasn't a big problem for me. I have the Sharingan. I just record the books to my visual memory. I knew it. Tamaki lowered his head and hit the table. "Anyway, that's a little surprise compared to what's coming next for those who never pay attention," Midnight said, pushing her glasses up, raising an eyebrow. She seemed to have expected the boy's behavior, so she wasn't too surprised. Tamaki raised his head. "I'll introduce you to a guest teacher. He'll be around to oversee your final exam, she said. Just as her words ended, a behemoth-like man, standing at the height of 220 centimeters, full of bulging muscles that had muscles on their own, appeared in the middle of the class. "I am here," he exclaimed, laughing as everyone gave him a glance of stun. The most famous hero in Japan was here. Shouldn't he come next year? I found it a bit shocking. How much did I mess the timeline? I narrowed my eyebrows. All Might and I made eye contact. I was certain. His smile grew wider, and his eyes were focused on me. Chapter 51. All Might was laughing. For a second, I could tell he had his eyes on me. I had a hunch. But again, he could be someone like Mona Lisa. No matter where you stand in the room, she'd keep staring at you. "Hello, future young heroes," he said with a voice full of vigor. "I'm going to be your guest teacher for the final exams. I hope that you take good care of me." My classmates were pretty excited to meet the #1 celebrity in Japan. I lowered my head a bit, remembering how I had talked about him when I had tried to take Stain down. It wasn't something to forget. "All Might, I'm a big fan. You're really here?" "Oh my God. It's the best day of my life." Everyone had something to say. Even Nijire, who looked like a little fangirl. I, on the other hand, was thinking about something else. All Might shouldn't come to UA until Midoriya's entry exam. But he was here early. For a man who was portrayed to spend all of his vitality to save people, having him in UA had me a bit suspicious. Could it be the butterfly effect that things strayed too much from the original timeline? Keep in mind, the butterfly effect was neither good nor evil. It depended on one's perspective on the coming events. He talked a bit with someone who asked him a question. Then he looked at me, pointing his finger at me. I tried to dodge the finger, but he confirmed that he was actually looking at me. "You're Kenshiro Shonen," said All Might. I nodded. "I'm wondering, how has Night been doing?" he asked. Oh, so that's why he was looking at me. I was worried that he was going to suspect me of being affiliated with All for One because of the variety of my abilities. But he didn't. I replied, "He's doing fine. Sometimes he cracks weird jokes, but he's still a good person at heart and a fit leader. And he teaches us a lot." "I see," muttered All Might as he looked at the ground. "In fact, his office has pictures of you," I said. All Might's smile got wider. "He's still the same, even after all this time. Does he still give his sidekick a hard time?" I held back my chuckle. Night Eye and Bubble Girl had this kind of relationship of a strict father who believes in tough love and his daughter. Whenever she got on his nerves, Night Eye would punish her by tickling her. I nodded. "I see. Anyway, students, it was nice to see you." "I'm going to see you soon," said All Might. He then walked to the door. He had to bend down a bit to get out. My classmates were getting excited. They started chatting with each other about what just happened. "Anyway, since your exams are the day after tomorrow, you can leave early," Midnight said. It seemed that I'd have to study a bit for the finals. Man, I love the Sharingan. What are the topics? English, math, physics, and history with arts. After that, the physical test. If the one who'd fight me happened to be Midnight, I'll make sure to bully her, I thought, looking at the schedule. I then looked at Midnight and smiled at her. I could tell that she knew what I was thinking of. She gave me a nervous smile back. I'd pay her back for all of the teasing she'd given me. There were a few in our class who had improved their strength and could pose dangers to teachers. Tamaki with his characterizing quirk could. Nijire and I. Nijire had so much stamina that in the future, she could fight a villain who still had vitality for 20 minutes straight. Well, she won't fight him since he's been arrested already with Kai's gang. I was brought out of my chain of thoughts when I felt a hand tapping my shoulder. When I turned, I saw Midnight smiling at me. "Is there a reason for that smile of yours?" she asked me, seeming to be calm. "Is it wrong to smile randomly?" I asked. "From the guy who only smiled 3 times in my class?" "Yes," she said. She seemed to be here to confirm her doubts. "It's not certain that I'd end up against her anyway. Could it be random, though?" "Count this as 4, I replied, stretching my arms up. I was just smiling because this long year is going to end. "Are you not thinking of causing more damage than you should?" "I actually am thinking of that," I replied with a sarcastic tone. "Kenshiro," she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "What? Don't forget that I've saved your life," she said, tapping my shoulder. "I still remember how much you were afraid of that gay lion." So, she was here to remind me to be gentle in case we ended up fighting. "I know. But why are you saying that?" I asked, pretending ignorance. "We may end up fighting. It's not like I'm a suited opponent to someone with ranged abilities like you. And you have destructive potential. I know you can pass. But it'd be unfair for the one you team up with." "Who?" "It's random," she said. "Okay. I smiled and decided to tease her. So, in short, you're asking me to be gentle. Era. Aren't you a naughty little boy? She teased back. She tapped me on the shoulder, walked to her office, picked up her bag, and left. After that, Nijire came and stood by my table. We chatted for a bit, and she asked if we're going to study together. Since I'm moving out today, I agreed to that. I'll be sending you my new address, I said to Nijire. You're moving out? She raised her eyebrows, seeming to be surprised that I brought that up now. I nodded. That must be annoying, she added, placing her hands behind her back. Not really. I like the change, I said. If I were moving to a cheap house, I'd get annoyed. But I'm moving out to a better place. Glad to see you happy with that, she said. If you need anything, please, tell me. I can help you with moving things up. Anyway, I'll see you then. Sure. Good luck with studying for the exams. You too. It was obvious that we weren't going on a date today, nor having intimacy. When we left the class, we went our separate ways. Nijire went home, and I decided to visit Eri for a bit. Since I had been busy making money, I had ignored her for a bit and didn't visit as often. She's in Aizawa's class, accompanying him from time to time. Eri was the little girl of UA, sometimes staying with other teachers, sometimes staying at the principal's office. When I went to Aizawa's class, I found Eri standing there. Upon seeing me, she ran to me. Not being able to ignore the cuteness of her action, I placed my hands on her ribs and started throwing her in the air. She was laughing because of that. Big brother. You're here, she said. Her accent and tone were quite similar to the one All Might had used. She may have learned to speak like that from the TV. You were talking like that blondie. You mean Uncle Yagi, she said. Yagi was the real name of All Might, I believed. Uncle Yagi? Yes. I have been training hard lately, though. Train hard? I narrowed my eyebrows. I thought you train occasionally and spend most of your time playing? I used to. But given how bad my Uncle Yagi's health was, I want to help him, Eri said. I've managed to resort him back before his state got worse. Uncle Aizawa didn't let Eri finish, and he said he's afraid. I want to show that I can do it. Wait. She was excited to heal All Might? And she's training hard for that. They're making a 4 to 5 years old girl train hard to heal All Might. I get the reason. But to make her train harder at this age, that's kind of got under my skin. Eri, came Shota's voice. I thought I told you to keep that a secret. But Kenshiro brother is a good person. I trust him. Aizawa Shota, aka Eraserhead, stood in front of me. We need to talk, he said. Chapter 52. I was staring at Aizawa, who had just realized that Eri had spilled All Might's secret injury to me. Aizawa didn't seem pleased with that, and I couldn't blame him, as it was a secret that, if exposed to the public, could raise the crime rate. After all Might was a symbol. He was someone who inspired people to become heroes and made villains think twice before carrying out major evil plans. What are you going to do? He asked. An unpleasant expression took over my face. With a frown, I asked, about what? All Might's injury, or the fact that you're forcing a 4-year-old child to work? He raised his eyebrows. When he opened his mouth to say something, Eri interrupted. Big brother, it's not their fault. It's Eri who wanted to help weak uncle, she said, on the verge of tears. Don't fight with Uncle Aizawa. I put her down and smiled at her. We're not going to fight. We're just good old friends. It would be annoying to have a child in the middle of adult conversations. Really? She asked, wiping her tears. She looked at Aizawa, who gave a bland nod. It happens often that we glare at each other, that's all, Aizawa said, pointing to the door of his class. Now, Eri, why don't you go and see if someone is absent today? Count on me. Eri will count them, she said, her expression turning firm, before she ran inside the class. She was a naive small girl. Deep down, I was actually happy that I saved her from Kai. The last thing I wanted to do was to fear the butterfly effect. If I let her that day, I may have spent most of my time thinking about it. I know I'm all about survival and all, but I don't want to live like an animal. When she got into the class, my smile vanished, and I stared at Aizawa. There was tension in the air, I could tell. You care about her. You don't like that? Do you want to turn her into a child soldier? Aizawa raised his hand and shook his head. I'm a teacher, not a government Secret Service agent. Despite having a stoic facial expression that would make one question whether Aizawa was a robot, he had a good way with sarcasm. You better not be, I threatened. I didn't know why, but I was quite worried about Eri. I used to be one of the people who believed in the hero society. But memories from my previous life in another timeline changed my mind. The Public Safety Hero Association had approached a little girl with talent and turned her into an assassin, tricking her into believing she'd be a hero. I may not admit it, but Eri was more like a little sister to me. I'd never let them do that to her. He sighed. Let's not switch the topic. You know what she told you now, don't you? Let me guess. All Might's injury, I replied. You don't sound surprised? He asked. Right. My anger about what happened to Eri made me forget to put on an act. Luckily, I had thought of an answer in one of my made-up conversations. I had a stray idea one day about what if someone asked me how I knew about All Might's injury, so I made up an excuse. I couldn't care anymore, I said. Besides, I had a hunch. All Might's appearance got less and less. For someone like him with those principles, his performance wouldn't be affected without a reason. So I guessed either it's illness, injury, or he's simply aging. You have good detective skills, Aizawa admitted. I hope you know how impactful the information you got is. I nodded. If this conversation got out to the public, there was a chance that a civil war might break out. You know, peace was no different from money. People gave money their value because of their faith in it. Same for peace. With no faith, no symbol, the society could go on a rampage. I know. Potential apocalypse, and there is a chance that crime rates will rise by a high margin. You're not dense, he nodded. How did you get that impression in the first place? I said. Okay, I was a guy with big muscles. But that didn't mean that I had no brain. Never said I got it, he replied. Anyway, I have something to ask you about, I said. Now that I messed up the timeline by bringing Eri here, I wondered what happened to All Might. She had declared that she'd used her power on him, but was stopped by Aizawa Shota. What's about All Might's state? Since you could already conclude he could work for a limited time a day, I won't go into that again. He lost his stomach, and his respiratory system was beyond repair. We managed to get his stomach back to the level where it was damaged. His respiratory system got better, but still bad. In short, he can sustain his power longer than before, and he's in less pain, he said. My jaw slowly dropped. Even though I had known that, I still felt sorry for the man who got this injury. Having no stomach and barely being able to breathe, it was a miracle that he could talk. I sighed. So Eri could get him back to that level, where he was in the middle of the injury, but not heal him completely. Why did you stop her? I asked. She became emotionally unstable, and her rate increased. If I didn't stop her, she could annihilate All Might's existence, Aizawa replied. Anyway, I won't stress the fact that you need to keep this secret, and I won't stress on the fact not to abuse a child. The only way for that to happen is for me to die. Until then, no one can hurt her, said Aizawa. I'll trust you with this. I crossed my arms and nodded in approval. Anyway, don't you have exams to study for? Asked Aizawa. Yeah, I'll be leaving for now, I said. I then went back to my house, finding that my family had packed up everything. There were a few trucks and workers picking up stuff. I chatted with them for a bit. They seemed excited, especially Mineta. I gave him a glare, warning him not to do anything perverted in my new house. After we drove off, I found myself in front of a huge mansion. A bald man in butler clothes came to greet me at the gate. You must be the young master Miss Rin talked about, he asked, bowing slightly. I'm Alfred. I'll be your servant for now. Alfred. I love that name. Did Rin know that I'd approve him when she picked the employees? Alfred. These are my mom, dad, and little brother, Mineta. Take care of them. As for the latter, don't let him do as he likes. I don't want him to turn into a spoiled brat, I said. Hey, Mineta exclaimed as if he was offended. I laughed, my older brother instinct satisfied. Mom pinched my back and smiled a bit. Kin, yelled a female suddenly. I'm happy that we finally can live together. Finally. Mom stressed that word with a dumbfounded look on her face. When I turned, I saw Rin running toward me before hugging me in a tight hug. She was a famous woman who was climbing the trend recently. But in front of me, she acted like a little affectionate girl. All of my family was giving us looks.